The life of a single dad. After over 17 years of marriage, Christian comedian Bob Smiley lost his marriage within a few months. We'll talk about divorce recovery and single parenting on this episode of the Healing Place Marriage and Family Podcast.
Welcome to Healing Place Marriage and Family Podcast, where families are equipped to reflect God's redeeming love. And now here are your hosts, Michael Campagna and Jared Lambert.
Hello, everyone. This is Michael Campagna. Welcome back to the Healing Place Marriage and Family Podcast. Joining me, as always, our co-host, Jared Lambert.
Welcome, everybody. It's good to be back for another episode. Excited about today's topic.
Yeah, today we are very pleased to have a special guest. Stand-up comedian Bob Smiley is here with us today in the studio via the internet, the magic of technology. And Bob has come to share a little bit about his testimony and what God's been doing in his life and the life of his family. Bob, thanks so much for being here with us today.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. It's the last 8 days I've been at a camp in East Texas. I think it's called Camp No Wi-Fi.
Oh, man.
It's yeah, they put me in a cabin, which it was nice if you're not afraid of raccoons, and I'm not, so it worked out well. But yeah, it's good to be back among the normal people now. So I'm all showered up, and so it's nice to have Wi-Fi now and be able to talk to you guys. And I hope I sound good. I actually just got through running. I'm not bragging, but I'm training for a 1K.
1K,
so,
nice.
Yeah. So I may sound a little out of breath right now, but yeah, I'm excited to be on, man. Thanks for having me.
Come on. Well, Bob, you've been a Christian comedian for over 15 years. That's correct?
Yeah, actually, this is my 19th year.
19. Come on.
Amazing. Yeah, my hotel shampoo collection is massive. Like it's really good.
All right. And you're a family man also?
I am. Yeah, I've got 3 boys. Got a 11-year-old, a 13, and I've got a 16-year-old. So yeah, if any listener needs the correct answer to any question, my oldest is 16, so he knows everything, evidently.
Good reference, huh?
Yeah. I call him. Yeah, his name's Coulter, but we just call him Google now. So
there.
just seem to know it all.
The adolescent encyclopedia syndrome.
Yep, that's right.
You go ahead and use that for free, Bob. I won't charge you.
All right, I'll use that when I'm tired of the audience laughing and enjoying themselves. That's terrible. I don't even know you well enough to say that.
Come on now. We're all friends here. It's all good. Well, Bob, so you've been doing stand-up. How'd you get into that line of work?
It was crazy. God opened the door, and not only did he open the door, he kind of kicked me through it, because all through my life, people was telling me, you should do stand-up, and I thought you could only do stand-up in, comedy clubs and bars, and so I had no desire to have that lifestyle. And so I got my degree in elementary ed. I was going to be a teacher. I picked elementary because I already knew most of the alphabet, and so I really wanted to be like a positive, strong, role model for kids. And I was looking around and realizing a lot of kids are growing up without dads. And so I thought, if I could teach and do elementary, then I could probably be a positive male role model for kids. So that was my goal. My junior year in college, they had a stand-up competition, and I did it not because I wanted to do stand-up. I actually did it because first prize was $500, and I was going to school in Abilene, Texas. So that's like, 6 months rent out there. And so I did the competition at my college, and I won, not because I was good. Everybody else was just terrible, like just absolutely bad. And so I won, and I thought, what a great experience. I'll be able to tell my grandkids that I did, won a stand-up competition. And so I graduated. Before I became a teacher, I wanted to see what it was like to make money. So I got a job offered to do photography in Dallas. And so I did that for a year, paid off my college, everything was great. And then I was going to start teaching. And the week I quit photography and was going to start looking for a teaching job, and this will tell the listeners how old I am, but my pager went off back when pagers were cool.
Oh, wow.
And yeah.
911. 911.
Yeah, exactly. And it was area code 615, which I didn't know even that area code. Now I know it's Nashville. But I called it, and this guy just called me out of the blue, and he was like, hey, I'm road managing a Christian singer named Clay Croft, and we leave for tour in 2 weeks. And Clay just said it'd be fun to have a comedian come out and entertain the crowd, in between the bands and stuff. And I've got to hire a merch guy to, set up all the merch and stuff. And he said, I saw you do that stand-up competition your junior year. and thought you were really good and you were clean. So I don't know what you're doing, but do you want to go on tour with us?" And I look back, like that changed my whole life. But I remember being on the phone with him and I was like, "Okay, yeah, that sounds like fun." Like I had no idea that it was about to alter my life completely. But I flew to Nashville. I walked off a plane, got on a tour bus, and went out on tour with Clay Cross. And then the Newsboys saw me, and they asked me to tour with them the next year. And several other bands saw me, and and then people just started calling to get. So that's how I got into it, which is great. But I'll have kids after the show come up and be like, "Hey, I want to do stand up comedy. How do I do it?" And I'm like, "Do a stand up competition your junior year in college and wait for people to call you." Like I have no good advice for them.
The
At
the
all.
Bob Smiley method.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's how I got into it. And I mean, there were moments, I actually was doing stand up comedy for 3 years before I realized, oh, this is what I do. And I remember
Right.
we had just bought a little house right outside of Nashville. And I remember I was sitting in the kitchen and I was writing this bit. And I always had this mentality that I was going to do stand up until the gigs ended. And then I would go back to Texas and start teaching. And I remember sitting like my third year doing comedy, and I had all my dates written on a dry erase board. And I looked up and I was like, I wonder how many dates I had. And I looked up and my calendar was completely full for about 5 months. And that's when it dawned on me. That's how slow I am. Like it dawned on me, like, oh, this is what I do. I guess. I guess I'm a comedian. And God just kept opening the doors for me to have opportunities. So that's how I got into it.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Come on. Well, not to shift gears here too harshly, but I first heard of you and your testimony through the Tim Hawkins podcast, Potty Break, and you shared a lot about not just your comedy, but also kind of your personal story and just the things you've been walking through this last year with your family. And man, I was just touched, moved, just that your story of God's faithfulness and just what He's been doing in your life. And so I wonder if you would kind of speak to where you are right now, what you've been walking through, and just kind of your testimony.
Okay, yeah. Tim Hawkins is he's my best friend, and he's getting good at comedy. I think he's going to make it.
Coming along.
Yeah, I think he's going to get there. And if the listeners don't know him, they need to Google him because he is I mean this from my heart. He's the second best Christian comedian out there. So I wonder if I could fly that by you. No, yeah. This past year, and I'll just kind of like a Band-Aid, I guess I'll just throw it out there. But just a little over a year ago, I walked into my kitchen and my wife of 18 years was just standing there, and she said, "This is going to be a shock, but I don't want to be married anymore." And she, over the course of the next, I guess month, she moved out and started living with her mom, and then she filed for divorce. And so, yeah, the past year has just it's been a crazy roller coaster. But here's the thing that I tell people, for 18 years, I stood on the stage and I told people that God could get you through anything. But to be honest, my life was so good. Like it was ridiculously good. I had great kids. I had a great wife. We had a great church. I grew up with a very loving family. My parents are amazing people. So I was standing on a mountaintop the whole time that I'd been telling everybody God can get you through it. And this past year, my kids and I, we've been wandering through a desert. Like it's just been very, very tough to get through. And it's so refreshing to be able to look people in the eye and tell them God can get you through anything because He's just been so faithful. And I said there wasn't any warning, but I got to thinking about it like the week before she told me that she didn't want to be married anymore. I noticed that whenever I'd ride in the passenger seat of her car, she started turning my airbag off.
Man.
So I guess it was a little warning, but I mean, here's the deal. Like, I've always heard laughter's the best medicine, and after this year, I can honestly say it's Vicodin. No, it's not. I'm just kidding.
My gosh.
Yeah, but so I've seen God be very faithful to me and my kids, and so I really, although I don't like the situation that I've been put in, I do
Right.
like the opportunity that I have to be able to tell people that are going through hard times, that are going through divorce or whatever, any thing that God will show up and get them through them. And I'm not saying it's easy. Like the first like 3 months. after she moved out, I mean, I was honestly, I always felt like I could have my own AMC TV show, like Breaking Bob. Call myself Heisenbob Bob and shave my head and get a black derby hat. Um, and by the way, you shouldn't get that reference because that's a horrible show. But uh, but here's the deal: my kids and I, we really kind of rallied together, and we were like, you know what, this is a bad situation, but God's going to get us through it. And we really relied on Scripture. And all through my life, my grandmother taught me when I was young. She actually pulled me aside one time and was like, read the Bible when you're young, because it makes me mad when young kids never read the Bible, and of course elderly people are reading the Bible like crazy because it's like they're trying to cram for a final.
Right.
So I we read the Bible every morning before they go to school, and one story that really jumped out was Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And I was reading that story one morning, and it just dawned on me that God saved them in the fire. He didn't save them from the fire. And so that's exactly what we've seen all year, is that even though we feel like we're in the fire and, having to deal with a whole bunch of new problems, God has been right there, just absolutely amazing. I have time? Can I tell two really cool God stories that how he did some amazing things
Yeah,
this year with the
absolutely.
kids?
Right.
And I hope this doesn't offend anybody, but my family's big hunters. I grew up hunting with my dad, mostly duck hunting, which I
Hold it
love.
right there. Hold it right there, Bob. This is South Louisiana, sportsman's paradise.
Oh yeah. Okay, so we're all good. We're all good. Okay.
Yeah, you've
Yeah.
just increased our listenership.
I mean, how amazing is duck hunting, where you see the sun coming up in the morning, and my dad and I would be hiding under the slide by the swing set, and I'd be throwing bread out. They'd waddle up anyway. But every Thanksgiving we go deer hunting, and so we went uh, Thanksgiving morning. I'm sitting in the deer stand with my youngest son Xander, uh, and he was 10 at the time. And and okay, since you guys are hunters, I can tell you this. You know how you have buck urine in a little spray bottle
Right.
to hide your scent, which is what we've been told. I don't know. Maybe liberals made that up just to get us to spray ourselves with that. But there was a bottle sitting in the deer stand, and Xander, I guess, didn't know what it was, and so he looked over and he goes, "Hey, Dad, can I have some of that breast spray?" And
Oh man.
yeah, and I'll be honest, there was a moment where I thought, "Ooh, this could be really good." Um, but no, I explained it to him. I said, I explained to him what it was, and he was like, "Oh, okay." And he sat there for just a little bit, and it was dead quiet. And all of a sudden, he looks over and he goes, "How did they get it?" And I was like, "You mean how do they get the buck urine?" And he goes, "Yeah. Did they put a bucket under the deer and then scare him?" And we died laughing. And since you know about hunting, like you're not supposed to be loud, and we laughed so hard that I was like, "There's no way we're going to get a deer." And within 30 minutes, a big, nice buck came up, and my son got a really nice buck Thanksgiving morning. And then that evening, I dropped my middle son off at his stand, and I was leaving on the four wheeler, and I got a call from him, and he said, "Hey, can you come pick me up?" And I was like, You're only going to hunt 6 minutes?" And he was like, "That's all I need. Come get me and my deer." And I went back, and he had got the biggest buck he'd ever gotten
Wow.
Thanksgiving evening. And so, while if you're not a hunter, that probably doesn't mean anything, but I mean, as a father son moment, like it's just such a cool thing. And as we
Right.
were walking back to the house, uh, my middle son just looked at me and he said, "You know what, man, God just keeps showing up. Like he just keeps blessing us with stuff." And so I love that my kids have seen firsthand how God has gotten us through, the troubling times. And the other story that I love is I've been trying to take them snow skiing for about 4 years, and something always had happened. And then when somebody heard that I was going through a divorce, they contacted me and said, "Hey, I have a ski cabin in Cloudcroft, New Mexico, and you're welcome to have it for the whole week after Christmas." And I was like, "Oh, that's so great," because I've been, my kids and I, we've really been wanting to go snow skiing. And so I booked the flights, and then he called me about a week after I booked the flights, and he said, "Hey, I'm going to send you some stuff to do in Cloudcroft." And I said, "No, we're just going to ski the whole time." And he goes, "Oh, no, they haven't had snow in 4 years."
Oh
And
gosh.
I know, and I didn't want to be mad at the dude because I mean he was blessing us with the house.
Right.
So I got my kids together and I was like, "Hey, they haven't had snow, so we're probably not going to get to ski." And my youngest son, who's just really strong in his faith, he goes, "I'm on it. I'll pray for it." And I mean, he had this just total confidence of, "No, no, no, it's good." And so he did every night after we read, he would pray for snow. 2 days before we flew out there, they got 4 foot of snow.
Come on now.
To the point where we couldn't even make it to the cabin. There was so much snow, which actually made my middle son mad. He turned to Xander and he was like, "Oh, had to overdo it, didn't you, with your praying?" But what we did is, I stay in hotels so much that I have all these points. And so there was a Hampton there. And so I just cashed in points for the week. And there was only one other family staying at this Hampton. And they had an indoor heated pool. So, I mean, we would ski all day long and then come back to this hotel, which is basically our own private little area, and have an indoor heated pool. And I mean, it was the greatest vacation ever. And, and just seeing the amount of snow that God gave us. And then the last day we were skiing, we started hitting rocks and gravel, and the snow was melting. And we flew back home, and they haven't had snow since. I mean, it's just stuff like that. Yeah. And my middle son even said that. He goes, God's not even trying to hide the blessings anymore. He's basically just showering them down on us. And, I love that. I love that they have seen that. And they've seen laughter really be healing as well. One of my favorite stories is my youngest son came downstairs and he was like, "Is the divorce final?" And I was like, "Yeah, why?" And he goes, "Oh, because there's still some furniture left upstairs." And, he was kidding because there's not. But he looked at me, and we used to have these non-touchable decorative towels. And he looked at me and he goes, "If it's really over, I'm going to go touch the towel." And so I started, I was dying laughing. And he did. He walked over and he put his hand up and he ran his hand down the towel and he looked over at me and he goes, "Freedom!" And the next hour, the next hour we were popping each other with towels. And, my oldest was standing on the couch, like just, like trying to hit us with rat tails. I mean, it was a great, joyful time. So the little things like that that get you through it. Even just speaking of being in the bathroom, like I got in the shower one day, and this was one of the first times I laughed. And like this was about 3 months after everything was over. But I got in the shower and I was like, "Why do I have so much room?" And I was like, "Oh, it's because I don't have a shelf with 46 bottles of stuff now. So I don't have to read bottles now to know which, I can shampoo there's one bottle in there. It says Holiday Inn, and that's all I
Yeah.
need, And so, you start seeing little glimpses of joy that just remind you that, what, God's not done with you. There's still some happiness to be found. It's just getting through the dark times, to get to those times and let God, show up and do what he does.
Come on.
Yeah, Bob, it sounds like, that you had established a great relationship with your kids, before all this stuff happened. And it's good to see God show up in those little ways. But I want to see if you could, as you look back on the last 12, 18 months, what kind of wisdom or what kind of insight can you give our listeners who are going through a divorce? And what are some things you felt the Lord leading you to do as far as shepherding your children's heart through this season?
Yeah, great question. We've always had morning devos, and my kids and I have always been really close. I go out and do usually 2 shows a week, and then I'm home all week, like during the day. And so my kids, as soon as they get home from school, we're playing out front, and so I'm home more than most dads. And so we've always had a really good relationship. But like you said, in the past, like 15, 16 months, I can't believe how much closer we've gotten. And it's basically because we have kind of circled the wagons and said, "You know what, we're going to get through this." And so we've relied on scripture, prayer, our church, just like leaning on people. But the main thing I would advise parents that are going through that is 2 things. One, love on your kids every moment you get. Like spend
Right.
every moment that you can with your kids. And then have this open communication, like, answer any questions that they have, sit them down and say, "Hey, look, this is not ideal, but we know you've probably got questions," and just be open with them. I've talked to a lot of people that have said, "Oh, it's none of the kids' business. They don't need to know." But I totally disagree with it. I mean, they're all of a sudden plunged into this scary time, and I think the more information you can give them, I think the better to help them kind of deal with it. And just love on them, and don't. You're probably going to be really angry. There's going to be a lot of things that's going to make you angry. Don't take it out on your kids because
Right.
it's not their fault. And try not to be angry in front of them. Like just know that they're watching every single second of how you handle something like this. And so you really want to put your best foot forward and show them how to handle it like a man or a woman.
Come on.
Yeah.
And along those lines of anger, how do you help your kids deal with their anger, deal with maybe bitterness or resentment? How do you help them love their other parent?
I let them express themselves. I let them talk through their anger. If I see that they're really bothered, I'll sit them down and say, what are you thinking right now? And be honest. And then I let them talk through their anger, and I've let them know that it is okay to be angry. Because this is not right. Like divorce is not right, and it shouldn't happen. But you can't force somebody to stay married to you, so it's something we have to deal with. But I let them know that it's okay to be angry. But we go to the scripture about honor your father and mother, and so if you're angry, you still need to honor your mom. You still need to honor your dad. Even if they're not doing what's right, you still need to at least honor them. It's okay to be angry, but you still have to you know to honor them.
Come on.
Yeah.
Well, that's good wisdom for parents, but what about you as a person, as an individual? How have you kind of shepherded your own soul as you've walked through this time? What are there any resources, any people in your life? How has God helped you move from a place of just brokenness and grief to really begin living again?
Well, yeah. So here's the best advice I got, and I actually got this from Tim Hawkins. When I called him and told him what was going on, he stayed at my house so much, and he knew my ex-wife, and so it was a shock to him as well. And so he said, "Well, the only thing I can tell you is don't go through this alone. When you start getting depressed, pick up the phone. When you're feeling down, get out of the house, go be with people, go to your church or your friends, and be as because God built us for a community." And the first thing you want to do is just you want to sit in the living room and not do anything. And that's Satan just messing with your mind, and it just creates this dark cloud that just can consume you. So lean on your friends, like check in with people. My comedy friends have been amazing. Darren Streblo calls me 2 or 3 times a week still. John Branyan, Tim Hawkins has his East Wing butler call me. Um, it's they've really Ken Davis. I don't know if you know him. He's a little older, but he sends me a telegraph every once in a while.
There you go.
So yeah, I mean, but they really have showed up and just checked on me all the time. And so that's what I would say to somebody that's going through it. Just don't go through it alone, and don't just sit in your house. I got some bad advice early on. One was you just need to get your mind off it, just sit and watch Netflix all day. Well, that's not a great thing because you sit there and you're just brewing on stuff. So I think you do need to get active, get out, be with other people as much as you can. Yeah. The other advice I got was terrible. Was a guy here was like, you just need to go out and date a bunch of hot women. That's what you need to do. Just go date a bunch of hot women. And I was like, oh yeah. Hey, where do they keep those? Uh, Yeah, I was like, I've got a Sam membership, but you probably have to buy a bunch of them. So,
Right.
it's just like, and that's the worst advice. So don't try to go replace, I mean, just lean on the Lord, dive into the scripture and, spend as much time around community and friends as you can. And little by little, like I said, it will be depressing for a while. And I'm not trying to sugarcoat it and say that it was great. It's a hard thing to get through, but if you stay focused on God, you're going to start seeing little drops of joy show up in your life, and that's going to get more and more until you're back being showered with joy.
Bob, listen, both Michael and myself, we're both pastors, and, the more I pastor and the more God speaks to us through Scripture, the more I understand that I'm supposed to shepherd people. So, you talked about community, you talked about fellowship. Tell me about how your local church and the body of Christ within your local church was there for you during the season.
Yeah, and they know I'm saying this. I actually went out to eat with two of the elders last a week and a half ago. They did not handle it very well at the beginning. They kind of just looked the other way. They knew what was going on, and nobody reached out because you know we are really active in our church, and so we kind of were the poster family of a family that had it all together, and everybody was happy, and I had several people from the church after they found out say that, they were shocked because, one lady even said, I hung out at your house one night, and I remember thinking, I wish I had a marriage as strong as Bob and Wendy's. And so, I mean, it was a total shock. And so the church kind of just looked the other way and was like, that's a shame. And then one of the elders finally went up to our outreach minister and was like, do you know what's happening with Bob and Wendy? And he was like, yeah, it's terrible. And he was like, well, why aren't we doing something? And they kind of just paused and they were like, "Oh, we do need to be doing something." Now, since then, I will brag on them. They have really stepped it up, and they've are constantly checking in and meeting me for lunch and asking how they can pray for the kids, and they're checking on the kids. And when the kids go to like a retreat or a camp, the church body has been really good about spending extra time with them, talking through things and praying with them, and so. I think right at first they didn't, and I think it's just because they didn't know what to do. I think they were shocked and didn't know how to handle it. But once they kind of realized, oh, they're our church family, they really have stepped up. And that's a challenge I would give to your listeners. If you know somebody's going through something, even if you don't know them really well, just a phone call makes a huge difference. Just to let somebody know that they're not alone. And just a little phone call of, hey, I don't know what to say, but I can pray for you. So just tell me how you want me to pray for you. And, stuff like that is huge.
Come on.
Yeah.
Well, Bob, we just are so appreciative that you would come and speak to our listeners. If they want to get in touch with you online, social media, all that stuff, how would they do that?
Yeah, my Facebook is Bob Smiley Comedy. My Instagram is Bob Smiley Comic. My Twitter is Bob Smiley Comic. My website's bobsmiley.com, which I think is your homepage, right?
Starting now, yeah. Just
yeah.
changed it.
We'll just go with it. But yeah, and so all my social media links are on there. And my email is just bob@bobsmiley.com. And I answer all my email. I answer, if somebody messaged me through Facebook, I answer all that. I'm very approachable, and especially in the last year, because I've started talking about it on stage, and I can't believe how many people are going through this. I mean, there's a huge attack on marriages right now. And so when I started
Right.
talking about it on stage, I thought I'd get one or two people that might come up and say, I'm going through it. But, I was in Detroit about a month ago, which I love Detroit. When I was there, they taught me how to draw a chalk outline of a body.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I was in Detroit and I was doing a show and I talked about it on stage. And I basically was saying, you know what, God shine, he can shine the brightest light in the darkest areas of your life. And when I got off stage, this guy immediately made a beeline to me. And I thought, and he looked angry. And I thought, oh, here it comes. I'm, going to get some kind of, negative feedback. And he grabbed my shoulder and he said, my wife left me yesterday.
Whoa.
And he said, I didn't even want to come to this concert. I didn't know who you were. And my friend dragged me to it. Again, somebody reaching out to somebody that, and he said, my friend dragged me to this. And he said, one, I didn't think I was going to laugh for a long time. And I laughed a lot. But two, I definitely didn't think I was going to see somebody going through the same thing being so positive about it. And so, I mean, there are a lot of people, and a lady that same night came up and said, I'm kind of past it all now, but thank you for talking about this, because how do we know about the dangerous water if we're not talking about people that are drowning in it?
Yeah.
And, that just really hit home. And I mean, God's definitely opening up some doors, but people need to know they're not alone in this. There's a lot of people struggling and going through this. And, if they stay focused on the Lord, he'll get them through it.
Come on. Well, Bob, we appreciate you. Thank you so much for being a part of our show. If you're ever in Baton Rouge, man, we'd love to hang out and
Absolutely.
come see your show.
Okay, that'll be awesome, man. Yeah, if I get a show there, I'll hit you guys up.
Absolutely. All right, folks. Well, that wraps it up for us today. Make sure you subscribe, like, comment, and share this podcast with your friends. And be sure to check out Bob Smiley on social media and online and YouTube. Thanks very much. We love you. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us for today's podcast. For more information about Healing Place Church, visit us online at healingplacechurch.org. To stay informed of upcoming events, check us out on Facebook. Thanks again for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, and share this podcast with your family and your friends.